Hello, 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 and welcome to Old Women Who Write. I'm Jean Palin. I'm your host, and what I do on this, I don't even know what to call it. It's not a blog, it's whatever it is. What I do on Old Women Who Write interviews is to introduce you to people who are writing, particularly women, particularly older women who are writing, and talk about their writings that you can enjoy. So here we are. Today we're with Diane Wald. You can see her next to me with the gorgeous hair. I don't know which side she's on your screen, right? But here she is in all her glory, um, with a fake background, right, Diane?
That's fake, yeah. I wish it weren't.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're in. We'll talk about you're in the part of the country where it's sort of normal. So
Yeah.
okay. Well, welcome. I want to tell you a little bit about Diane, and I'll just tell you from the back of her most recent book, which is called The Bayrose Files. And what it says about Diane's writing history is that she's a poet and novelist. She's published four poetry books or collections, two novels, five chapbooks, and hundreds of poems in literary journals. Her most recent books are the I can't read the Warhol Pillows. Yes, that's a great name. The Warhol Pillows, which is poetry, and My Farmer's Brain, My Famous Brain, which is a novel. She's worked as associate professor of English and a dean of faculty, and the only thing that doesn't fit into anything else is that she is a director, a donor communications director for a national animal welfare rights organization. That's an extra thrown in there. I love that. I love that. And she lives near Boston. Um, so, welcome, Diane.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Sure, I'm pleased to have you here. I love talking to writers. Writers' brains are different than other people's brains, especially, may I say, and this is probably spoken in jealousy, especially poets' brains are different than other people's brains. So,
You're probably right.
um, if you would give the people who are watching this a quick sort of overview of the story of, what is the Bayrose Files about?
Okay, sure. The Bayrose Files is the story. It's written in the first person by the main character, whose name is Violet Maris. She's 26 years old. She's an aspiring journalist. And she gets it in her little brain that she wants to do an expose on an artist colony in Provincetown that is generally called The Home. It has a longer, fancier name. But she doesn't really know how to get in there until she comes upon the plan to fake her way in because she's a journalist. She's not a painter or a poet or a fiction writer. So she uses someone else's work to apply and she gets accepted. And so the book, I call it a tale of unraveling personal ethics because Violet Violet hasn't grown up yet, even though she's 26, and she doesn't really yet understand the consequences of her actions. So that's the main story, and there are a couple of other subplots in there.
Okay, I love that phrase, the tale of unraveling ethics. That's a great phrase, and it can apply to so many situations, right? I wondered about that because the story has certainly is about ethics and ethical decisions, but it's also about the nature of love, the
Mhm.
nature of innocence in some ways, because the main character's best friend gets AIDS. And this is set, let me say, very early in the days
Mhm.
when we didn't know about the ravages of HIV.
Right.
Um, and so there's a certain innocence that the main character brings with her, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
no.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up about the perhaps the second best character, her friend Spencer, who does succumb to AIDS and whose story she uses to get into the writers' colony.
Yes.
I set the story in Provincetown in the 1980s. Even though I lived there in the 70s, I wanted to use the 80s because that's when AIDS was coming to everyone's notice, and nobody knew too much about it yet. And I thought that was a really important part of the story because, as you say, she was innocent on a lot of levels, but especially about that. And it brought out, the depth of her friendship with this man. And when I don't want to give away too much of the story,
Right.
but
Right.
later on, this whole character, her Spencer, what happens to him throws her into complete turmoil, and that's when the story breaks open.
Yes. Yes. There's also a sense, and again, I'm with you, I don't want to give too much away, but no, she accepts his stories and uses them
Mhm.
in an illegitimate way because they're so good.
Yeah,
So another element here is what we lost, as a
yeah,
society, or lose constantly with people whose voices never get out,
yes.
even though they
Yeah,
can be brilliant.
yeah, well, you're a terrific reader.
Oh,
Really, I mean, that's really great. I have to remember that.
yeah. I take this seriously. When people
Yeah.
are writing, and particularly, of course, when people are writing with skill and when they're writing with heart, I think it's my job to pay attention to
Mm.
what's being written. So, um, you chose to write this as a novella. Now, I'm not used to reading novellas. I always feel like I'm not getting my money's worth if it's short, right?
Right.
And in this case, the novella is like 100, 102 pages, something like that. So it is short. Okay.
Mm.
Why did you choose that format?
I'm not sure I did choose it. It
Did it
just kind
choose
of
you?
happened. It happened to me. I had a previous novella called Gillyflower about 4 or 5 years ago,
Mhm.
and that one was planned to be short, but this one I had the story and I wanted to tell it in a simple, direct way, and I wanted it to be a little bit funny,
Mhm.
and so I realized that when I got to the end of the story, that was it because I could have made it a novel. I could have gone back and padded all the characters. I don't mean padded in a bad way, but I could have, enlarged on all the characters and the conversations and what happened in the home, all of that.
Right.
But I really didn't want to. I hoped it might have a larger impact if it just went along on its crazy little way and then stopped.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That makes sense. That makes sense. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm going to become more appreciative of novellas. Um, I tend to be, when I even say I'm a writer, I shrink from even saying that because I've written one book. One book. I've written a lot,
Right.
but I've written one book. But I write. I always tell people I write short in my writing group. When people are writing 2 pages of poem, I'm writing a one-page chapter. I mean, a one-page story. And
Uh-huh.
I have difficulty in expanding
Yeah.
from there. I hear people when they say, but you could elaborate on, this character or this, or I want to know more about what happened. I have to say, when I read yours, I wanted to know more at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to know more. Um,
Well, stay tuned. Maybe there'll be a follow-up.
there you go. That would be great. That would be
I don't
great.
know, a few people have said, I've heard both sides of that. Some people have said, "Oh, thank God you didn't tell me what happened. I couldn't have taken it." Other
Uh,
people said, "Well, I felt cheated at the end because I wanted to know what happened." But I think I left enough breadcrumbs that,
yeah,
reader might be able to create an ending for herself or
yeah,
himself. I
yeah.
hope so.
I think so. And why this particular story? Is it based in any way? I'm not asking you if you were unethical ever, but it's based in any way on your life or your experience. Why this story?
Okay, well, it was. I've always, my whole life, had this affinity for Provincetown, Massachusetts. I don't know if you know, most people know a bit about it, but it's a crazy little place on the tip of a peninsula, very artsy, very bohemian. And my parents always took us to, I grew up in New Jersey. My parents always took us,
Oh, did I? Go ahead.
really, oh, we'll talk later.
Yeah.
Um, um, they took us to the Cape pretty much every year whenever they could afford it. And one day of the vacation was always allotted to visiting Provincetown. So I have a picture of myself on the wharf in Provincetown at the age of 5. So
Oh,
I always loved the place. Then when I grew up and started writing, I was lucky enough to get accepted to this place called the Fine Arts Work Center. But I was accepted as a poet. I didn't cheat to get in. It was in the 1970s and 1980s, as I explained before. And none of those things happened to me. In fact, the characters, I made it a point for myself not to base the characters on people I'd known. So their creations, there's certainly types that you might find there, but they're not based on friends that I had.
yes.
But so that's where the story came from. I almost felt as if Provincetown, the setting, was a character in the book because it was very important to the way things
Hmm.
came out with Violet. She could walk along the shore, she could see what was happening in the town, she could meet characters that she never would have met otherwise. So that's how it all came together.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Um, the are you, well, you're a poet, so I was going to say, are you influenced to a great degree by your surroundings, by where you're living or working or
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, my husband and I have lived in this place outside of Boston in one of the suburbs. It's a ramshackle old house with a lot of property and a lot of gardens and a lot of birds and animals and stuff. And I love that. I mean, my husband's always teasing me because he wants to go traveling. I said, I'm really happy right here. I have everything I want right here because there's so much in your surroundings, and I like to draw from that.
yeah, that makes sense. And I want to take sort of a little tributary here about writing retreats or write places for writing retreats that hold them there.
Yeah.
Because I did not see what that was about until I went to one.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm sure they vary in quality or, whatever. And I'm not talking about going to writers' conferences now where
No.
they have speakers and workshops. And I'm just talking about writers' retreat place. And the value for me was so high. When I went to a place in Georgia, oh, excuse me, in Tennessee in the mountains. And it was so what? I don't even know what the words are. I'm sort of stuck for them. I've been there 3 times now. And
Ah,
each time I go, my heart rests, my soul rests.
yeah.
Um, I'm able to work at writing in a way I'm not able to in my home, even though I have a lovely spot here on my back porch to write. It's very, very, very different. And I always want to encourage newer aspiring writers or experienced writers
Mhm.
to treat themselves like once a year, at least if you can, to go
Yeah.
put yourself in the company of, because you will meet wonderful people, of other
Right.
artists and writers there, and so for me, that was just my little advertisement for
Yeah, no, I agree totally.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. We sort of hit on this a little bit when talking about the HIV, but why did you set it in the time you set it rather than in present time? It could have happened present time or 50 years before that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Um, because that was when AIDS was really coming into everyone's attention,
Yeah.
and I wanted to show how terrible it was. I don't think people now exactly remember how terrible it was, because there's a lot more that can be done now about it. But there's also, I don't want to talk about politics, but there's a lot of stuff that should not be happening.
Yes.
Um, and so in a way we're going backwards. But I think there was that period in between, where people didn't, at the beginning it was so horrifying, but it was also mysterious and sort of there was a stigma attached to it, and there were all sorts of really strange problems. And when the character of Spence is described in the book, you can tell that he was living a pretty secret life. Even his sister didn't know who his friends were, except for Violet. So I just thought that made it added a little depth and consequence to her world, that she couldn't be so flighty and just, she had to stop and think, wow, this is the real world.
I think that's a real important part of the book. Yeah, and of the development of the character, for
Mhm.
sure. Um, this is one of the interesting things about the Bayrose Files is that it could have ended so many ways.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm glad it ended the way it did. I don't want to give things away, uh,
Uh-huh.
but I'm really glad that there was, let's say, growth,
Mhm.
um, emerging awareness of what matters, uh,
Yeah.
which is, you know, very nice, very, very comforting, I think, for all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, have you had a lot of feedback from others about the novella?
Yeah, I mean, it's been generally very well accepted. People seem to like it and have, very interesting things to say. There've been some good reviews and this and that. So, I'm just happy to see it out there.
Yeah,
It's wonderful to have readers. Absolutely wonderful.
yeah. You've been very prolific. I mean, really, um, you know, amazing. I mean, I'd love to read some of your poetry sometime and see the other side of you that,
What kind of film?
as a
Sure.
creative. Yeah. Um, the I said I always have an educational component to this, and I wanted to talk to you. Most of the people who watch or are on Old Women Who Write, I have a Facebook group also called Old Women Who Write, and it's
Hmm.
got several hundred members, and they almost the most of us on there are brand new or trying to get published or self-publishing or hybrid publishing,
Mhm.
because we found it. I tried for a year to get a traditional publisher. And of course, because we don't know what we're doing when we're first out there, we tend to go for the big New York publishers, you know,
Uh,
where we don't have a prayer, you know,
right.
of getting a toe in the door. But we don't know that. We don't know that. The Writer's Digest tells us, here's the list, go, go, go. Here's how to write a query letter. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. And I followed it slavishly, for a
Uh,
year and got nowhere. Um, and so, the vast majority have to find another route if they want to see their book in print, period.
mhm.
How I went with a hybrid publisher because I have no skills at technology or, doing it myself. Um, how did you find and get accepted by a small house traditional publisher? I should hold it this way.
Re- Regal House.
Yeah.
They are they've been so amazing. How I found them, it really was just a lightning bolt of luck. Well, I do, after all these years, I do know that I do know well enough not to go for the big publishers. I tried one time about 4 years ago to get an agent. And oh my God, I think I contacted over 120 agents.
Yes.
And and I got some nice letters back, but mostly they weren't interested. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. So I started going after independent, they call them the indie publishers.
Yes.
Um, Never sent a book to a big publisher. Well, actually, you can't unless you have an agent, pretty much.
Yep.
So what happened with Regal House was earlier you said how interesting it was that this was a novella. Well, getting a novella published is very hard. So I started entering it in contests.
Ah.
And there are several, the internet is wonderful for writers now because you can look for whatever you need and then apply online without having to wait for the mail to come and get your rejection letters that way. It's much easier. So I looked up, there were 3 or 4 contests for novellas. I placed on the short list in 2 of them, and one of them was Regal House.
Mm.
So I think there were 5 people on the short list. My book was one of them. And that was exciting because I had
Sorry.
worked.
Diane. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
That could
I had
happen again. Who knows?
You're popular.
A
So,
call coming in on my computer. I left my phone in the other room on purpose, and God
oh,
knows
funny.
why. It's coming in
Oh,
on my computer. Sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. So anyway, I had read up on them, and they just seemed like a fantastic place. They're independent, but they were successful. They published like 40 books a year. They're really sort of second tier, maybe you would call
Yeah.
them. Not to cast aspersions in any way. So anyway, I got my nerve up and wrote to the editor and I said, hi there, I was on your short list for this novella contest. Would you consider looking at the book anyway? And she said yes.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
there was this long, long, long process when they accept a book. What they did was it took a year and a half after that conversation
Oh
for
my.
her to accept the book, which included massive questionnaires. I was going crazy filling out these questionnaires, but they were useful. And then we had to have a Zoom interview at the last minute. And during the Zoom interview, my computer crashed. So I had to go and get my iPad and finally got to talk to them. And I went downstairs and I said, well, I blew it because the
Right.
computer crashed and now they think I'm an idiot. Uh, but fortunately, they didn't. And so I got, selected for this summer 25 cohort. There are 12 of us who were all published at the same time. And they're great because we got to know each other over the internet and
Oh wow.
support each other. It's really very nice. I love this publisher so much. I can't tell you.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
I think people don't realize that when they say, okay, we'll accept you, that's the beginning of a very long process. And you
Yeah,
can be cut off at any point during
yeah,
that process.
that's right. That's right.
20 years ago, 2 friends and I wrote a couple of books about being over 50, being female and over 50, called like Invisible No More, The Secret Lives of Women Over 50. And we had it was one of the biggies, interested publisher. And we had conference calls, and which they
Mm,
ask us a million questions. And then they made editing decisions. They wanted us to go back and add, questions at the end of each chapter, big rewrites. And we went
mhm.
all through that, and then they said, "Nah, we don't think this is going to work."
Oh man.
So it isn't the fact that you get accepted or invited is
Right.
is the beginning of the story for sure.
Yeah, yeah, really.
But I'm glad
But
your experience was so good with its Regal House. Is that right?
Regal House Publishing, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that was so good for you. Yeah. So what do you got on your plate for next? What are you thinking about, or what are you writing?
Well, since they accepted the Bayrose files, I didn't want to start anything long, so I started writing short stories and flash fiction, which I'd never done before. But I was really lucky. I did like I this was probably starting in the end of 2023, and so I had like 10 or 12 stories together, and most of them I got published online in various online journals. So that's been really fun. I'm not sure what is next. I'm just doing a little bit of this and that, but trying to keep at it, you know.
Right, right. Is this your vocation or your avocation?
Oh, I think it's always been my vocation, but you know, unfortunately, we all have to support ourselves. So most writers and artists decide to become teachers, and that's what I did for a long time. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I had a lot of interesting jobs, and oddly enough, the one that I ended up with when I retired from after 18 years was the communications director at the animal place.
Wow.
And that was tremendous fun. I mean, I've always loved animals more than anything, and I could get up from my desk, take a break, walk downstairs, and visit the animals in the clinic or in the adoption center, and
Right.
all the people who worked there were crazy like me, so I loved it. It was great.
That is great.
And plus,
There
I
is,
get to write every day. You know,
yeah.
you keep your writing muscles going, even if you're just writing press releases or something.
Oh, I like that. Yes, yes. Because I realize that the longer I'm not doing it, the harder it is for me to sit down and do it.
Yeah,
Writer's block, it's lazy block, or it's something block, and it makes it harder the more time I let go by.
yeah,
So yeah, a writing practice is critical, I think,
yeah.
to everything about writing, to everything. Yeah.
Hmm.
So where can people get your book? How can they get it? And do you have websites and stuff like that? Tell people.
Yeah, well, you can't buy it on my website because I'm too stupid to be able to set up
Oh
that
my,
part
by
of
the
the
way.
website. But you can get it almost anywhere. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at the Regal House website. You know, you can get it at a bookstore. So it's out there.
Do you have anything, not jams and jellies being sold in the lobby, but do you have anything other like a website or anything you want people to go to or no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the website has all my books and descriptions of them. So that's dianewald.org,
Okay,
.org.
okay.
Um, and that's pretty much all of me right there.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Man, this has been delightful. Our half hour has flown by.
Yes.
Leave anything out that I should have covered or
Oh
asked?
gosh, no, I don't think so. It was terrific. I really appreciate it.
Good, good, good. Well, I hope all of you out there enjoyed it. I know I did. This is what a joy that I get to do this, it's so fun. And I hope you will buy Diane's book. I know you will buy it or borrow it or steal it or, whatever, get it from the library. Insist they stock it at the library. That's very helpful for writers. So I hope you will, and come back the next time we interview someone new on Old Women Who Write. Thanks for being here. I think we have stopped recording. No, we haven't.